just in terms of audience interaction. So.
Mm-hmm. I have a feeling some people are wondering.
Right. All right, well, I'm Kevin Long. I'm the pastor of the Intertwined Faith Community, and I'm here today to talk about choices for the seventh generation. And seventh generation, considerations around that, it's a term that's used when you're thinking about the impacts of the things that we do today that will have an effect on our descendants. So I'm going to be concentrating on ecological justice today, and my first question for folks in the audience is, why is ecological justice important? Why should we pay attention to this issue? Any ideas out there as to why that is important?
Because the longer you don't pay attention to it, the more it mounts up and gets worse.
That's right. Yeah, if we continue to down the path that we're currently going on when it comes to polluting the earth and the things associated with that, it's just going to compound, and the earth is going to warm at a increasing rate, and things will just get worse and worse in terms of the impacts of that. Some of the impacts we're seeing already from air pollution and the warming of the earth and so forth. The air pollution we generate results in lower cognitive performance, mental illness in children, dementia in adults, premature births, and respiratory diseases. So it's definitely having an impact on people around the world in terms of their health. Air pollution alone accounts for about 7 million deaths every year. Global warming will create 200 million climate refugees by 2050. If you're looking at the year 2100, in the best case scenario, the ice sheets will collapse, 400 million more people will suffer from water scarcity, and many major cities will become unlivable, especially a lot of the coastal cities. In the do-nothing scenario, if we don't change anything about how we operate, 2/3 of the world's major cities will be flooded, and almost none of the world's land will be capable of growing the food we currently eat. Climate change is having an impact on our ability to grow food and the nutrients that are in that food. And it's not simply a matter of, oh, well, if we used to grow corn at this latitude, since it's going to be warmer north of there, we'll just move north of there and grow that same food there. But that's not how agriculture works. It takes many, many years for the soil. It's not just a temperature matter, but it takes many, many years for the soil to be able to sustain different types of food production. In short, the path we're on right now worsens health for everyone. It increases migration, it increases war and crime related to depleted resources, and the effects are especially acute for the vulnerable, those people that the gospel requires us to pay special attention to. I want to talk first about plastic consumption. Now, I'm going to talk today about choices that we can make as individuals to have an effect on our climate footprint and so forth. By no means do I want to suggest that that is the biggest factor in this issue. What's more important is systemic change and policy change and the decisions made by the corporations. But I am going to talk first about some of the individual choices that we can make. So plastic consumption, when you think about buying a bottle of water, for instance, we might think of it simply as a matter of we have our money and we give our money to the Sheets, and the Sheets gives us a bottle of water. End of story. Like that's an easy way to think about it. But there are a lot more factors involved. If you look at the bigger picture, where does the plastic end up? Well, very, very little plastic is actually recycled. The little symbols that they put on the bottoms of plastic bottles and other plastic containers are kind of a mythological creation by the fossil fuel industry to make us think that plastic can be recycled, when in fact less than 9% of plastic is recycled. And when it's recycled, it does harm, and it can generally only be recycled once. So where does the plastic end up? It ends up in the ocean, other waterways, other bodies of water. It becomes microplastics. As it breaks down, we end up drinking that. The microplastics make people sick. They give children cancer. The production of plastic makes people sick. The production of plastic hastens climate change. Bottled water contains bacteria, which also makes people sick because you got this water just sitting there in a plastic bottle. The plastic bottle companies are moving to privatize water, which means that the publicly available water that a lot of us benefit from will start to disappear over time as these other companies come in to privatize that water, which means the price of water will skyrocket for many of us. And then the plastic bottle companies pay the government to impede any sort of policy change that recognizes the harm that plastic production does to us. So whereas when we first looked at this, we looked at this part of the transaction, but you need to think of the whole. You're not buying water when you buy bottled water, you're buying plastic. And so the plastic ends up in the ocean. The company you give, the bottled water company gives, the money ends up going to big companies like Nestle, who are trying to privatize water, who are buying our legislators, who create pollution, which contributes to global warming and gets in the waterways and makes people sick. So when we make those choices to consume plastic, they have a much more far-reaching effect than they need to. So what can you do to reduce your reliance on plastics, your consumption of plastics? Any suggestions from folks out there?
It's not easy. I've been trying.
Absolutely true. It is not easy. And that's when I talk about the systemic change. You should be able to go into the sheets and buy more drinks that don't come in plastic, but there aren't that many. There aren't that many drinks that come, aside from energy drinks, there aren't that many drinks that even come in an aluminum container anymore. So they do make it hard.
I have to admit, I'm old enough to have seen this, where when you wanted water, you went to a faucet, you got a glass of water, and you drank it. Now, almost nobody goes to a faucet and gets water because it's not sweet, it's not bubbly, it's not all the wrong things for it. So marketing has convinced us the only water to drink is flavored water out of a bottle, out of a plastic bottle, and it's been very successful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you undo that.
It's hard.
Point.
Yeah, it's hard.
I don't drink bottled water normally. I mean, I have already, but normally I go to a faucet and get a glass of water and I'm happy. I'm a rarity. I admit that, because not many do that anymore. I don't know how you do it.
I've been trying to buy, like, if I have to buy something in plastic, buy larger, containers that it's not like use once, throw away. But that's hard too.
It is hard. And I'm hoping to have time at the end so y'all can check out the things that I brought in at the back. All of the things at the back, I have a dental floss, toothpaste, bamboo toothbrush, an aluminum can, antacid that comes in a metal container instead of plastic, hair product, bar soap, bar shampoo, laundry tablets, toilet tablets, dishwasher tablets, and some other cleaning solutions that come in small tablets. These are all things that you don't have to buy in plastic containers. The path of least resistance is to buy it in plastic containers. But one thing that I've come to appreciate over time, when I make these choices rather than buying in the plastic containers, not only am I not buying plastic, it also takes up a lot less space. I'm starting to think, you go to Costco and you buy these gigantic containers of things, and it's like, I think about it, it's like, well, Costco doesn't pay me rent, but they're taking up a whole lot of space in my house with these oversized packages that I used to buy. So when you make some of these choices about the cleaning tablets and so forth, they also have the benefit of taking up a lot less space, and they're generally more environmentally friendly, aside from not coming in a plastic container.
Another major use of plastic, which has happened over the years is just in packaging.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you buy a dollar toy, it's got $2 worth of plastic wrapped around it, and you pay $50 for the toy.
Right.
I mean, it's just, or even medicine comes in plastic wrap that's.
Mm-hmm. Now, and admittedly, there are some things that are made out of plastic that you want to be made out of plastic. It's a perfect application for it. For instance, if you go into the hospital and you have to get one of those IVs in the back of your hand and they use that little plastic tube for that, that's not what I'm talking about today. You know, those very special applications where plastic is ideal. But yeah, why does a toy need to be wrapped in this seemingly impenetrable,
Yeah.
plastic pack? Yeah, that's very frustrating. One solution to the plastic issue too is we travel a lot. Our families live far away, and so we go on a 6-hour trip to my wife's parents, 8-hour trip to my parents on a somewhat regular basis. If you carry some sort of bottle in the car with you, we generally will stop at a Sheetz or a place like that a few times along the way. Your drink choices generally are in plastic bottles. The cups they offer, a lot of those are plastic. If you carry one of these with you though, originally I had in my mind, oh, you can only put coffee in one of these. Well, that's not true. They will, you can put a fountain drink in one of these. Whatever they are dispensing there, you can put it in a bottle like one of these. Just tell them at the checkout, hey, this is a soft drink, it's not coffee, and they'll charge you accordingly. They really don't care, and you've got a better container for it as well. So that's one solution to it, is just carrying bottles like this with you when you travel, and then it doesn't matter what they sell their drinks in, you can put it in whatever you want. And they generally stay hot or cold longer than they would otherwise. We talked about some of these things. I just mentioned reusable containers. You mentioned the sink thing, and it's true. They've created this idea that water that doesn't come out of a plastic bottle doesn't taste as good, or it's not as clean. For a lot less money than buying bottled water on a regular basis, you can buy a filtration system for under your kitchen sink and have water that not only doesn't have bacteria in it like bottled water does, but also gets filtered legitimately. I used to teach school in a place, I won't name the town, in Ohio, but there's a Marathon plant there. So the water is probably not the cleanest in the world, but a few years after I taught there, I found that there was a bottled water company based in that town, and I was like, what? If people knew where this water was coming from. So there's really there's nobody watching out for where that water comes from. You really have no idea what you're drinking. Opt for glass or metal paper containers. They can be recycled legitimately. And concentrates versus liquids, I already mentioned, but we can look at the thing, or you can take the time to look at the things on the table back there. There are some things I've had run into, I haven't been able to find other options for example, fluoride rinse. I have not been able to find fluoride rinse in a non-plastic container, but as you'll see, there are a lot of things available in non-plastic containers. Another big thing that we have control over is our fossil fuel consumption. We think about it when we need to buy gasoline. We grab our money, we go to the gas station, and we buy gasoline. And you can think that's the end of the story. I'm just buying gasoline, I give them my money, they give me my gasoline. Again, there's a much bigger picture involved in this. We give our money to the fossil fuel company, in this case Exxon. They're kind of the worst offender when it comes to this thing. They give a whole lot of money to our legislators. And I should mention that we live in one of 3 states in the country where bribery of our legislators is legal. It's very sad and it's somewhat embarrassing, but whereas most state employees who are not legislators, you're not even allowed to buy them like a couple cups of coffee. You can go into your legislator's office and give that legislator Super Bowl tickets, luxury vacations, whatever you want. And I mean, ideally that wouldn't affect their governance at all, but I think we know what happened when...
That's why our Supreme Court people live in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Yeah, we got an issue there too. But anyway, they use that money that we give them our money thinking it's just gonna buy gas, but some of that money makes its way back to our legislators. They make decisions accordingly to benefit them and not us. Exxon creates air pollution, creates global warming, which is killing all sorts of species. In addition, when we burn fossil fuels, it creates air pollution, which pollutes people's lives, especially folks who are less affluent, and also contributes to global warming. So there's always the bigger picture to take into account. So burning fossil fuels makes people sick. The production of fossil fuels makes people sick. Fossil fuel leaks and explosions cause damage, death, and suffering. Production of fossil fuels hastens climate change. The burning of fossil fuels hastens climate change. Fossil fuels are a worldwide commodity. Unlike electricity, which can't be shipped overseas, any fossil fuels that we produce here, whether we like it or not, become part of this world commodity. They end up going to countries all over the world, some of which are not very nice to their people, or they have policies with which we disagree. Because the more fossil fuels you produce, the more it lowers the price of fossil fuels, and it results in the production of more fossil fuels. And fossil fuel production contributes to folks like Vladimir Putin. The war in Ukraine is a fossil fuel war. It's funded by fossil fuels, by the fossil fuel production that they do there. So the oligarchs around the world are strengthened by this fossil fuel economy. Fossil fuel companies also use the money that we give them, whether directly or indirectly, and they receive a huge amount of subsidies. They more than any other industry, the fossil fuel companies receive huge subsidies, probably because of this arrangement that we have going on here. So they also use that money to spread disinformation. Things like humans are not to blame for climate change, or plastic is meaningfully recyclable, or it's our personal carbon footprints that are to blame, not the policies and other things that are part of our society. Or the other one that's more popular lately, it's kind of like they've done a complete hurdle over the issue from denying that humans are responsible for climate change to it's too late anyway. So you'll see that more and more in the press, is that people are saying, oh, it's too late anyway. We might as well continue on our current path because there's nothing we can do about it. But it's always good to follow the money. Yeah.
I'm curious to know how we subsidize fossil fuel industries.
We just give them money to do what they do.
Well, in what form?
Government subsidies, it's just handouts
For what?
to produce fossil fuels. Just like we
I'm
pay.
not familiar with this.
Oh yeah, we give them huge amounts of money to produce, just to do what they're paid. So for instance, my wife runs a dance. Our tax dollars are given to the fossil fuel companies to simply do what they do. Personally, I think there should be a government subsidies for dance studio owners, because my wife runs a dance studio. I think that would be fantastic. Unfortunately, they would rather give federal subsidies to the fossil fuel
I'm a little
companies.
concerned that you're throwing out some facts here, but you don't have some facts to back them up here. I'm not a fossil fuel advocate, but I'm just saying, you say you're giving money to them. I'd just like to know what form we're giving them money.
They're federal subsidies. I mean, you can just look it up. There are all sorts of industries that get federal subsidies. For instance, farmers. I grew up in an agricultural place.
I understand. I'm familiar with that.
Okay.
But in your future talks, I would hope that you would have some facts that would support the allegation that we're just giving money. The government doesn't give money. There's some purpose for it. It has to get through Congress, and it may be unwise, but I'm just wondering in what way we do this so that people can challenge it, other than just say, don't give money to fossil fuel companies. Is it through, would it be through special depreciation of their oil fields, special depreciation rules or things like that, so that you have some idea how this filters through the from
Yeah,
the
this is,
taxpayer to the government.
it's open information. I'd be happy, if you give me 2 minutes when I'm done with the presentation, I'd be happy to give you multiple references on this. It's a well-known fact because it's not hidden information,
I
it's
guess I'm
publicly
ignorant
available
about
information.
that. I'm
So I'd be
sorry.
happy to give that to you. Yeah, it's just like my parents, they own farmland and they rent it to a local farmer and he farms that land. Depending on what crops he grows, or whether he takes time to do like a cover crop or something like that, he's given money by the government, he's given subsidies because it contributes to the health of the land to like mix up the things that you produce.
Exactly,
so
and there's a
forth.
purpose there, and
Yeah.
I guess the question of what is the purpose for fossil fuel? Because I know our fossil fuel, our oil production is growing in this country,
Mhm.
and there's some concern about, the question is, why is it growing? And we're making up some of the, I was just listening to a news story about the reduction that OPEC is planned, or has underway, reduction in supply
Mhm.
to support pricing, but increased oil production in this country is making up for the loss, the decrease in OPEC countries.
Mhm. And we pay the fossil fuel companies to do what they do. For instance, if you had to go and buy a gallon of gas that we didn't have those fossil fuel subsidies in place, it would cost over $10 a gallon. But we pay the fossil fuel we give the fossil fuel companies money so that gasoline costs less at the pump for the
I never
consumer.
heard that, that's interesting.
Mhm. So what can you do to reduce your reliance on fossil fuels? Any ideas from the folks here?
Electric cars.
Electric car, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
The fossil fuels make the electricity that run the electric cars.
Yeah, I have not been convinced yet that electric cars are an answer, because you use fossil fuel to produce electric to fill your battery to go 100 miles or 200 miles. I'm not sure there's a trade-off there yet. I mean, there are ways, but I don't see us using it enough, because unless you cover the landscape with solar cells,
Mhm.
I don't see that
I'm gonna
really
get-
being efficient yet.
I'm going to get to that. Now, think about one thing that's related to that is, number one, you can power, so I have solar panels and I have electric cars. So my cars are largely not powered by fossil fuels. So that's one option. Another thing is, if you're familiar with how engines, like internal combustion engines work versus electric motors, there's a huge difference in just the physical properties of that. Electric motors are about 4 times as efficient as internal combustion engines. So even if our fuel sources did not change at all, the electric cars would be much cleaner because they're better at producing propulsion. Think about an internal combustion engine when it runs. What does it do? Number one, it sits there and keeps running even when the car is not moving. So they're very inefficient in that sense. They also create a tremendous amount of heat. So some of your gasoline is used to produce that heat. Some of it's used to, you think about how an ICE engine works. It's, you're making these pistons go up and down and you're doing all these things. It's a terribly inefficient model. If we were to invent cars now, as opposed to, based on the fuel sources that were available 100 plus years ago, nobody would create an internal combustion engine to power a car. They would go with electric. It's a lot simpler. If you look at the parts involved in an electric car versus an ICE car, far, far simpler to put together. When I was a kid, I toyed around with electric motors. You've got one little component here, and you have a battery here. I also toyed around with an liquid fuel powered model airplane engine. That's a lot more complicated. It's not just a matter of taking a battery and hooking up a couple wires to make it go. So there's just a difference in the motor, the power source in general, that makes EVs a far superior technology. I would challenge you to find someone who has owned an ICE car and an EV car and would ever buy an ICE car again. There are probably some out there, but it's just a better way of making cars. So EVs, so what are some other ways that you can reduce your reliance on fossil fuels?
Solar panels.
True, yeah, if you put in solar panels, yeah.
Like public transportation.
Public transportation is huge. We don't do it very well. There aren't a lot of places where you can get around very well that way. But yeah, if you live in a place where public transportation works, it's great. Yeah. And way superior to electric cars too, by the way. Yeah.
Wind power.
Wind power, yeah. What else we got here? People tend to overlook lawn implements, leaf blowers, trimmers, mowers. Gas mowers are actually horrible polluters because they don't have catalytic converters. They don't clean their exhaust. So, and a gas-powered mower can actually be a bigger polluter than a car sometimes. And I switched over to an electric lawnmower maybe 13 years ago. They're quieter. I don't have to keep a gas can around. I don't have to worry about cleaning out, the carburetor or anything like that. It's just a simpler device. And the newer ones are, especially, are super powerful. You can also get rid of your grass. If you look at how God created the world, God did not create monocultures. God did not create land that was covered by one type of plant. That was not God's idea for a perfect creation. Our minds have become distorted along the way, thinking that we need to have this golf course looking grass in our yards. And so it's a lot of work depending on how you go about it, but you can get rid of your grass. You can, I flipped over a bunch of sod and planted wildflowers on a hill. I've got a steep hill out front where you couldn't set up a lawn chair anyway, and put some wildflowers down, and it's really nice to have something different in some places. So getting away from gas-powered lawn implements is a good thing to do. We talked about EVs. Now, EVs and plug-in hybrids are not practical if you don't have a place to plug them in. So for people who live in apartments that don't have parking garages, if you have street parking, it's just not a good solution, because one of the great things about an EV is when you leave your house in the morning, you got a full tank of gas, so to speak, because you charge at home. If you're not able to charge at home, that really makes things a lot more complicated. So I don't go around just telling everybody to get a plug-in hybrid or an EV, because it's just not practical for many, many people. We're fortunate to live where we do, in that, at least if we're going east, Amtrak is a good way to get to the major cities, so that's a great thing to do if it's an option. Carpooling is good, walking or biking is good, and we talked about these things as well. So those are some ways to avoid fossil fuels. There are decisions you can make around food. Beef is by far the worst offender when it comes to just the damage that it does to the earth. If you look at the way that beef is produced, it just uses a tremendous amount of resources to produce beef. I grew up surrounded by cornfields. This wasn't corn that people ate. This was corn that that cows ate, and that went into beef production. And so I would watch over the course of a season all the work that just went into producing that corn in the first place before it even got to the cows that ate it, and that part of the production. So it's just a very inefficient way to create food. So if you were going to knock one thing, if you were going to just make one change in your diet to help the environment, just eliminating beef or minimizing beef is a huge step that you can take, and you can still eat bacon. If you like ham like I do, you can. If there are just things that are really hard for you to eliminate, keep them around. Get rid of the things that don't mean as much to you, and any choice that you can make can help.
Is pork more
It's better.
environmentally efficient than?
Beef is just so bad. It is just so bad. Yeah. They're just these huge animals that eat a lot of food, and so.
Create a lot of flatulence.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the flatulence. It's the burping. It's where most of the methane comes from.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I thought, for years we were talking about cow farts, and it turns out it's not the farts that are the problem. it's the belching. So, sorry about that. Other things you can do, if you have the option of drying your clothes, you know, you can ignore your dryer and save quite a bit on your electric bill. The dryer uses a lot of power. It, you know, uses one of the bigger, higher amperage outlets. And we started drying our clothes on racks indoors, sometimes outdoors when the weather's nice, a few years ago. And it, you know, cuts your electric bill nicely. Clothing production, especially the fast fashion that's popular right now, where you can buy clothes from overseas for super cheap and people wear them a couple times and get rid of them. It uses a tremendous amount of energy, creates a lot of waste. The production of clothing does. So going to thrift stores, wearing stuff longer, those are good choices that you can make as well. Avoiding pesticides and toxins, and always thinking about where does this pollution go? Where does this wastewater go? And things of that sort. Keeping those things in your mind are also important decisions that you can, or considerations that you can take. So a little bit more about EVs. We did talk about them a bit already. They have a lower cost of ownership than gas-powered cars, even if you take out the fact that electricity is far cheaper than gasoline. Again, it costs about a quarter as much to power an electric car than it does to put gasoline in that car when you're talking mile for mile. You also eliminate oil changes. I changed my own oil. It cost me like $50 now just to buy the filter and the 5 quarts of oil to change my own oil in my car. So you don't need to change oil in an electric car, which is nice. And if you get a plug-in hybrid, you only need to change your oil about once a year. So depending on how much you change your oil now, you know, you can cut out maybe a couple $100 in oil changes. They're more reliable just in general because they're simpler, they have fewer parts. There's a lower initial cost for many of the models that are out there. The electric cars you often hear about are the more expensive models, the Teslas of the world and things of that sort, but there are a lot of less expensive models available. They leave home with a full tank of fuel every day. They're quieter. There are some nice incentives out there right now. I owned a lot of gas cars before I bought my plug-in hybrids, and we just recently bought our first full EV. Do you have any questions about what that experience is like about electric cars that we haven't talked about already?
Have you been stranded anywhere with
No.
your electric car?
I was once in my Chevy Silverado years ago when I ran out of gas, but no, I haven't been in the electric car, no. The electric cars, well, any car now, you know, we have those nice digital readouts, so whether you drive a gas car or an electric car, they do a nice job of showing, not just like, you're not just watching a little needle go down, you know, they'll actually show you how many miles you have left, and so as long as you pay attention to that. You do need to do more planning though. If you're going on a long trip, now my car will go 320 miles. There aren't very many days when I go more than 320 miles in a day, but we recently drove out to my parents who live near Toledo, Ohio, so it's like an 8-hour trip, and we did need to charge twice along the way. So before we left, I checked online for the places where you can do the fast charging. We found a couple of those, and you know, you can even check through the app whether they're available or not, whether they're working or not, you know, those particular chargers. So we did that along the way, and we were fine. Even, you know, it was our first time doing this, so we were a little nervous because, you know, yeah, you can run out of gas, you can run out of electricity and get stranded somewhere. That issue will become less of an issue over time as the installations are put in place. But there are certain places in the country, though, where you would not want to make the drive in an electric car because there just aren't enough chargers around. If you are an electric car owner, you then have the option of just renting a gas car, which is not that big a deal. You know, the savings you make during the rest of the year would easily pay for some car rentals along the way, so that's something to think about. But yeah, that's a good question, though. Yeah, you can run out of fuel. That is a possibility. Yeah. That's one of the nice things about the plug-in hybrids too, is that when you run out of electricity, it switches over to gas. So those are really, really, really popular right now. The plug-in hybrids are selling very well, especially in those areas where you don't have a lot of chargers, because like I've driven a Chevy Volt since 2012. First 40 miles of every day, you know, were paid for by my solar panels. Essentially, I was getting a free ride for the first 40 miles I drove every day. It wasn't very often that I drove more than 40 miles in a day, so it's a huge savings to make that switch. If you have a garage or a place where you can plug it in. Any other questions about EVs?
I've heard that if everybody had one, that the electric grids would go down. We
Mhm.
can't support them.
Right. I mean, that's not going to happen overnight, though. Things scale along the way. It's just how things work. It's how the economy works. If you look around, I mean, how many solar panels are in this neighborhood? I don't know that I saw any on the way here. We have a ton of rooftops and unused space, mountainsides, where we could be putting solar panels where we aren't. So the problem with having the real estate available to put in solar panels is just it's not valid. We have a lot of places where we could be putting in solar panels and wind where we haven't yet.
Well, that is true, but then you're changing the carbon dioxide conversion by replacing trees on a mountainside with solar panels.
I'm not saying to cut down trees. We should not cut down trees. I'm talking about the available space. Look at these distribution centers along the highways.
Yeah.
You've got football fields worth of acreage.
Yeah.
We should have, considering the amount of pollution they're producing at those distribution centers, they should be offsetting that to some extent by putting solar panels on the roofs. But the will is just not there.
No argument.
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about. I do not advocate cutting down, especially
and
mature
in this
trees.
area, the distribution centers are about every other block.
I know, it's amazing, yeah. They're talking about putting them up in Watts Township now, north of where I live. Just to get back to car prices and so forth, if you are in the market for a new car, or a used car for that matter, carboncounter.com has some good information about the cost of new cars or cars that you can get and how much, basically the price, and it draws into effect then the pollution that is created by driving that car. So I think 4 of the cheapest cars you can buy are electric cars now. But there's more information at that website if you're interested. So no energy production is perfect. You've got a downside to everything. Solar panels are great, but yeah, there's pollution involved in the creation of those. But there are better solutions. It's nobody should ever say that there's a perfect solution to any problem. But we have some choices out there that can be better. Some of the disinformation that we receive is like, well, if we have a bunch of solar panels and it's not a sunny day, then we won't have any electricity at home. And that's a major fallacy. Same is true of wind. When the wind isn't blowing, we won't have electricity. Well, nobody's suggesting that we have only one source of energy. The other thing is that we have a lot of energy storage options. So if we started putting in solar power all over the place to the extent that we were producing more energy from solar on a sunny day than we could use, there are a lot of storage options that we're not taking advantage of yet. The other great thing about solar production, or a more distributed generation of energy, is it lowers stress on the power grid. For instance, all the stress that would come from piping power to my neighborhood from a distant transmission station on a sunny day, that is cut down by the fact that I generate more power than I'm using. So not only do they not have to pipe that power to my house over those power lines, I'm also powering my neighbors' houses, which takes some of the stress off PPL and their infrastructure. So by having more distributed power, that reduces stress on the power grid. Also, with the extra energy, you can store it in places. There are a lot of promising solutions. You have kinetic energy storage, sometimes referred to as water batteries, depending on the application. So in this case, you have water that's inside a mountain. During the day, when you're overproducing energy, you can push that water up to a higher point, and then during the night, that water can be released. It can turn rotors, create energy. So it's basically a kinetic storage. It can be water, it can be heavy objects, whatever it might be. You can use that extra energy during the day to store that energy in kinetic form for later use. You can store energy as heat. You can store energy as compressed air, which would be a great application for our fracking infrastructure. The underground tunnels and so forth that are used in fracking could be used to store compressed air. Again, when we're overproducing electricity, store that compressed air and do a measured release then at another time. So there are a lot of promising technologies out there.
A couple of decades ago, geothermal heat for the home was the big deal. Haven't heard much about that lately. What's the report on that?
Yeah, it works. It's just boring, but it works. It's one of those things where it's a great solution in some applications. A lot of homeowners, it's not, because, like, for instance, I live on a 1/4 acre plot. There's just not enough space there to do geothermal. But if you have a nice bit of land, then it's a really good solution. And in fact, they're putting it in places in some cities in the country. It's more of like a shared. Instead of just putting in house by house, it's more of a shared geothermal solution. So it's taking the edge off of the colder temperatures by, starting at a 55-degree point and then just having to heat from there. So yeah, it works. It's just not perfect in every application.
And I've read recently about community solar panels as well, where a group of homeowners could invest in solar panels that support all of them. I'm not sure how you distribute it uniformly based on a person's investment, and I guess.
Yeah, I think it's based on investment. So if you live in apartments or you have a lot of trees or something like that, you can go in with other people to put in a solar array somewhere, and then if everybody has an equal investment, it offsets their electric costs by that much. And yeah, it's another great solution. There's resistance to it in Pennsylvania, but there are a lot of legislators who are in favor of it now, so I think we're getting to the point where it will be legal. That shows you the influence of the fossil fuel industry, though, the fact that community solar is not even legal. It's like, why not? It's supposed to be a free country. If you are a homeowner, if you do make your own choices about where you get your electricity, if you haven't been here, be sure to go check it out, because generally the PPL rate for comparison is higher than some of the other offerings out there. And if you want to, you can filter by renewable energy options. And I went with Cleaner Choice this past time that I re-upped, and I'm paying 3 cents per kilowatt hour less than I would if I went with PPL. So even if you go with a renewable option, sometimes you can save money off of what PPL is selling for. Be sure, though, be real careful. Like, you want to choose a fixed rate. You don't want any surprises there. Look out for the ones that charge sign-up fees or monthly fees, something of that sort. Yeah, but anyway, that's something worth checking out if you pay your own electric bill. Does anybody have any questions about solar? I have them. Again, it's a boring thing. You put them on your house, and that's kind of like the end of the story. They just work. And on sunny days, you're not paying anything for your electricity, and other days, you just do. But at least on the sunny days and the somewhat cloudy days, you're not. So they generally have a 20-year payoff. I got mine through a company called Solar City, which was absorbed into Tesla. And if my production falls short at the end of the year, they send me a check for the difference. So there really was no risk involved. It's just it's kind of like when you're deciding whether to rent or own property. Are you just gonna throw away your money every month and have nothing to show for it at the end, or are you gonna make an investment in something? So if you're gonna be in a place long term, it's worth considering solar. Again, you got to take into account trees and things of that sort. Do we go till 10:15? So we're doing okay. All right, very good. Any other ideas? This is a presentation that I have given on a number of occasions, and I've actually learned a lot of things from the people in attendance over time. And so this is, if you want to contribute to future presentations and you have any idea, this is your opportunity to do that.
Can I ask a question also?
Or yeah, and this is a good time for questions too.
Everybody seems to, for their trash collections, have recyclable bins. Do you know what they do with the recyclables?
It depends on the company that you're contracted with, what they do with them. I know, so generally in terms of recycling, your really lightweight plastics, especially those super crinkly water bottles, just throw them in the trash. They clog up the sorting machines and stuff, so those are trouble. Put them in the trash. Your grocery bag type plastic that's like super lightweight like that, the grocery stores will take those. What I've learned more recently is that along with those, your super lightweight plastics, other ones can go in there as well. So if you have, like if you buy bread bags, if you buy a bread that comes in a plastic bag, that's similar to those shopping bags, that can be put in those recycling bins as well. Any sort of cellophane, as long as there aren't stickers on it and stuff, any sort of cellophane wrap, that should all go in there. Should never go in your recycling bin though, because it messes up the sorting engines or machines. Aluminum is fantastic. Metal is super recyclable. You can just keep recycling it over and over and over again. Glass is very recyclable. Now, unfortunately, some recyclers don't take glass, but as long as you follow the rules. I go to Waste Management. That's who Marysville contracts with. I go to their website to make sure, yeah, this is a good thing, this is a good thing. Some places take pizza boxes, some don't. So I would check with whoever you're contracted with.
The thing on pizza boxes I've read is the grease.
Right.
If it's greasy, they won't, it
Yep.
just will contaminate everything.
Yeah, it just makes a mess of it, yeah.
So if it's a clean pizza box, they'll take it, because then it's just cardboard.
Mhm.
But if it's got grease on it, and unfortunately, as a cost saving, many pizza counters no longer put the pizza wax paper on the bottom.
Oh, I know.
And they
Yeah.
just put the can.
Just put it right in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Recycling is a mixed bag though. Like it's not perfect. It's not a perfect system. And so I always try to make sure to recycle my aluminum and glass because I know the success rates are highest for that, but everything, and paper generally I think is pretty good, but yeah.
So,
Go
okay.
ahead.
So the plastic bags should go back to the supermarket rather than to
Yeah.
recycling bins.
Yep.
I just have been very confused why they stopped recycling. Like our company does not take glass, but growing up, we would take our Coke bottles back, and is recycling glass energy inefficient, or why won't they come up with ways that we can return our glass?
I think maybe because it's heavy or maybe because it's breakable, but it is highly recyclable. It's just, yeah, I don't,
Okay,
yeah.
gotta find a new carrier, I
Yeah,
guess.
and there's talk of a movement where we would go back to that system where you had the returnable bottles and put the onus on the company that produces the bottles to reuse them, put the cost on them instead of just putting, and it's usually the plastic bottles that end up in the ocean, but they are creating a cost to society that they're not paying, these plastic bottle companies. And so, put the onus on them to take it back, and then they might decide to switch to glass or aluminum because it works better.
I buy milk at a local grocery store in glass bottles, and I
Yeah.
take it back.
Yeah, and they'll take it back.
Now,
Yeah.
why can't everybody do this?
Well, it's an inconvenient, and a lot of these choices are a matter of weighing inconvenience for us with survival for other people. But the day-to-day, you're not seeing that survival for other people piece, and it's challenging though. It is.
Dairy Township has an excellent recycling center. Have you been there?
Mm-mm.
And I take all my corrugated containers there
Mm.
and styrofoam, any kind of styrofoam container, peanuts and cups and what have you, can get recycled through there. And I have much more faith that the recycling management there will actually recycle things than I do if I put it in my recycling container from Penn Waste.
Mhm. Well, and you're doing the sorting, right? So
Yeah.
That eliminates
Yeah.
some of the cost for them and yeah.
Batteries, they take batteries.
Oh, wow, even alkaline?
Mhm.
Oh, wow, that's
Yeah,
great.
Take them home.
Yeah, because you can go to like, I think Best Buy or
Yeah.
Wegmans, like they'll take rechargeable batteries, but they won't take alkalines. I have a salvage guy in my town, I take those too, but.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of batteries just get thrown in the trash,
Mhm.
which is dangerous, but also not,
Yeah.
Yeah.
environmentally friendly.
Like, I was gonna make a comment about lithium batteries, you have to watch how you store them, and I've seen a couple stories, this past summer where they started fires on trash trucks because somebody threw a lithium battery in the trash.
Mhm.
And I have a lithium battery lawnmower and,
Oh, you do?
and
Okay.
and I like it a lot, but,
Yeah.
but you have to make sure you store it the right way too, the batteries themselves.
Well, it's still safer than a gas can, but yeah. That's what, when people say, well, you know, electric cars catch fire sometimes. I'm like, you know what happens when a gas-powered car catches fire, right?
Although I saw a news report, and it was a fire chief, I can't say what company, was saying that you have to have special training if you get in an accident with an electric car because of the hazard of, I guess, of its leaking,
Mhm.
something to that effect.
Well, yeah.
And I'm not an expert on that, but I did hear that news story from a fire chief.
Yeah, well, it's just like our fire extinguishers have the different labels on them depending on, you know, there's certain fire extinguishers you don't want to use on a grease fire, for instance, and electrical fires have their own designations. So yeah, it's all, you know, gasoline would be the same way. Any sort of liquid fuel would change the equation for that type of fire too. Yeah. All right, let me see what I got next. So I've been talking a lot about individual choices that we can make, and I want to re-emphasize, it's not that big a deal if you buy a plastic bottle of water in the general scheme of things. In fact, it's a bummer, it's probably going to end up in the ocean somewhere, and it will have some sort of environmental impact. The bigger problem is the money you pay for that plastic bottle is going to companies that are doing harm to people. So following the money is a big part of that. One thing that you can do that has a greater effect then is trying to affect more global change for things, changing policies to favor those choices, you know, these choices that we make more globally to something that will do less harm to the earth and do less harm to our siblings around the world. And so I have 3 things. I have a sign-up sheet that I'm going to pass around. Or actually, I'll probably put it back on that table so you can check it out when you're looking at those items back there. But there are different things with which you can become involved that can, you know, go to the legislators and say, listen, you know, we want community solar to be legal, like at least have the option to do community solar. We would like for, you know, when they put a new distribution center along our highways, we'd like them to at least put solar panels on the roof so that it offsets some of the pollution from all those trucks, things of that sort. So this first thing I'm going to talk about is called the Intertwined Actions List. It's a mailing list. I send out probably not even 1 message a week. But what it is it's a curated list. I receive emails from all sorts of organizations over the course of a week, different environmental organizations. And they will often have a petition that you can sign on to, or it's an easy way to write to the governor or your legislator to say, hey, listen, I don't think we should be, you know, drilling for oil next to this lake, or you know, whatever it might be. So what I do is, over the course of a week, I'll hold on to those, and then at the end of the week, or however often I get around to it, I'll take the ones that are not duplicates, that are not directly asking for money, because a lot of those emails are just asking for money. It's not a petition or anything. And I'll put those in an email, and I'll send it out to this list. And it lists what the issue is, it lists the URL. If you're interested in supporting that issue, you can just click the link and go, and you can sign on to that letter to the governor or legislator, or whatever it might be. So if you're interested in signing up for that actions list, there'll be a checkbox for that. So the checklist has a place for your email address, and then there's a box where you can check to join the Intertwined Actions List. There is a group called Pennsylvania Action on Climate with whom I work, and they are a group of folks associated with the Poor People's Campaign, and we do actions around, going to legislative offices to, take more direct action. We have a great advantage living where we do have some level of access. If you happen to go on one of the 50 days a year they actually work, but we have some level of access to our legislators, and we can visit their offices and schedule meetings with them somewhat relatively easily compared to if we lived in one of the far corners of the state. And so if you would like to just join the Pennsylvania Action on Climate mailing list to learn about what we're doing, you can do that. There's another group called Better Path Coalition. They put on the climate convergence that was held in Harrisburg in early October, and they do some other things. It's kind of similar to Pennsylvania Action on Climate, but less direct interaction with the legislators. It's more online things like social media campaigns and things of that sort, and the climate convergence, which is a great thing. But there'll be check boxes for each of those on the sign-up sheet if you're interested in becoming involved. This is very easy to unsubscribe from. If you decide you don't want that email a week from me, you can just click a thing at the bottom to unsubscribe. But anyway, those are the things that I'll have on the sign-up sheet. And this is self-explanatory, so I'll just invite you to take a look at those items in the back. If you have any other questions for me at this point, I think we have a couple minutes left. But I appreciate your attention.
How about a comment? It seems like it'd be a selling point if you could do community solar panels. I mean, there are so many developments going up in this area. If you had one that could advertise that, I would think you would have an advantage over all these other places, because it just seems like something that would be positive that people would want. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it's just the builders are just trying to build as quickly as they can, as efficiently as cost effectively as they can, and they don't have a lot of time to educate the consumer. They're just there's such a demand for housing, they're just looking to build houses. That's the business that they're in. A lot of people,
and as close together as they
oh my
can.
gosh, yeah, and then unfortunately they're like uprooting all the trees before they put in the houses, which is sad. But for instance, they make solar shingles where if you have a roof line like this, and this roof line faces south, you can put shingles on your house that collect solar power, and then have matching shingles that aren't solar panels on the other side. And I look around at the people who are paying tons of money for metal roofs, and the only return on investment for those is that it's a good quality roof that'll last a long time. Well, here you can put on a roof, solar shingles, where it actually is saving you money on your electric bill, but you don't hear much about those. It's just a matter of people learning that they're there, and probably the builders don't want to mess with it because it's a whole nother supplier, and then you need to put in an inverter and all the other stuff to get it plugged into the house grid. But for someone who was building a house and had some control over the process, it would be a great option, as with the community solar, because then the community solar is something that could stay with that property. And on my way in, it seemed like they had leveled out a bunch more territory west of town to put in more housing and so forth. And you could easily incorporate solar in that whole process, but it slows down the money making,
One other comment, maybe a year or 2 years ago, these water bottle companies went from this grade of plastic to a real thin, like you're saying, and so I was listening to you, and I could see where they might save money on that, but there's other considerations, maybe you shouldn't do that. What's your comments on going from the water bottles that used to not crackle to the ones that do now? Any comments on that?
Since plastic really isn't meaningfully recyclable anyway, the less plastic that's there, the better. It's less pollution if it's one of those crinkly ones. It's still going to have bacteria in it. It's still going to create microplastics. The bad thing about those is that they get into the recycling machines and actually, foul them up, so
That's
one of
what
the
I was thinking of.
disadvantages.
I thought you made a comment to where they might not be so good, and that was it. Now,
Yeah.
now you say that, yeah.
But in general, just water in plastic bottles is a bad thing in general. There's a company now called Liquid Death that has, they sell water in big aluminum cans. It's funny though, because they look like energy drinks, but it's just water. But I think they're trying to overcome the stigma or something, I don't know. But,
Have you ever had one of those?
the Liquid Death? Yeah, it's just water.
No, but I just want, well, watering cans have been around a long time, and in Katrina, we had watering cans.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was the most horrible stuff in the world. The water was terrible.
Oh. Now, we drink a lot of water out of cans at my house.
We
It's
weren't
fine.
drinking the water. We saved the cans because it's coming to New York, but we didn't
Huh.
drink. They were.
I wonder where they got the water.
Huh?
I wonder where they got the water.
It was horrible water.
Yeah.
That's the reason I asked.
That's too bad. No, we like the Liquid Death. It's fun. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for your attention today. I'll put this sign-up sheet at the back, and I'll look up those fossil fuel subsidies for you. And thank you for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's gone. North Carolina. It's in Windsor, North Carolina.
Nobody wants it now.